Hello everyone, welcome to the 12th KK chess series. Today we're gonna keep on talking about tactic types. In this video, we're gonna talk about 3 types of new tactics, and they are intermediate move, checkmate threat, and promoting the pawn. Let's go straight into intermediate move. So what is an intermediate move? It means that when you're planning to make a move, you take another move which forces your opponent to do something, then you take your move. Now it's kind of abstract when I say that, so let's look at this position. In this position, White's rook is attacking this free knight. White really wants to capture this knight immediately. However, Black's knight over here is also attacking White's free knight on h5. So if White captures Black's knight, Black captures White knight, and the material is equal, and the game would probably be a draw. So an intermediate move would be that White captures Black's knight over here first, threatening a check on the king. In this position, Black has no time to deal with his attacked pawn on h4 because the king is attacked by White's knight. So Black has to capture the knight back. Then White gets to make its original move, rook a4, and capture the Black knight. Now we see that in this position, White is up a knight. In the previous example, if White just directly captures this knight over here, Black captures the knight on h5, and the material is equal. So this move, knight captures f6, is called an intermediate move, because this move trades off with knight f6, rook f6, then White captures the knight. Now let's look at another example. In this position, we see that White's bishop is threatening this d8 rook over here. If White captures this d8 rook, then Black gets a chance to make an intermediate move. Black then captures this knight on d5. It does not directly capture this bishop. So if White captures Black's knight, Black then captures back this bishop, rook d8. So Black made this exchange move over here, or an intermediate move, then came back and played rook d8. Now we see that in this position, White is down material, bishop to rook. And previously, if White chooses to protect its bishop, then Black simply moves its knight away. And we see that White is still down material. So what should White play? White has a beautiful intermediate move, just like the before. White wants to play bishop to d8, capturing this rook, but White also has a Black free knight to capture over here. So when White plays knight to e7, White is attacking this king simultaneously, so Black has to move its king away, then White gets to capture its rook on d8. Black captures back, and we see that now, in turn, White is actually up at advantage. So this bishop to d8 is an intermediate move for White. So this knight to e7 is an intermediate move for White. Okay, so let's move on to the next type of tactic, and that is a checkmate threat. So in this position, we see that White is attacking Black's bishop and Black's knight at the same time. If White plays rook takes knight over here, well, first of all, Black can just simply move its bishop away, let's just say to f8, and we see that in this position, Black is up material. Queen to bishop to 2 rooks. Furthermore, Black does not have to move its bishop away. Black can play queen to d1, although White really wants to play rook to a8, which is a big check over here. Black is attacking White's king over here, making a checkmate before White. So what can White do? White can instead capture this bishop over here. When White does this, it is actually threatening rook d8 checkmate for Black. Now black has to deal with that, right? There are different ways for black to do so. Black can either move one of these 3 pawns forward so that the king has somewhere to escape. Then white just simply capture this knight on a6. Let's just say black plays h6, white plays rook to a6. Now the material is even, 2 rooks to a queen, and the game will probably end in a draw. Another way is trying to protect this d8 square. We see that this knight cannot hop to d8 in 2 moves, so black must protect the d8 square with the queen. Let's just say black plays queen to h4, protecting this d8 square. And white can just simply capture this knight on a6 again, and we still have 2 rooks versus queen, and probably draw. So this move, playing rook to d6, is called creating a checkmate threat. It is preparing to play rook to d8, forming a checkmate, so black has no time to move its knight away. So the next move, white gets to easily capture black's knight. And finally, the last type of tactic that we're going to talk about today is called promoting the pawn. Now, the pawn gets the promotion when it moves to the end of the enemy's line, right? But often is the case is when this pawn is on the 7th line or the 2nd line, and it can't just move its last move to the final line. So, like in this position, white needs a small tactic to help its pawn move to 8-8. Let's look. Now in this position, white is actually down material, where it has rook, 2 pawns versus black's double rooks. And if white does nothing for the next move, then black simply captures this a7 pawn and gets a win. However, white has a beautiful tactic over here. White can play rook to b8, excellent move. If black captures this rook on b8, white can capture this rook back, at the same time promote its pawn to a queen. Now in this game, we see that white has queen pawn versus rook, and white is definitely up material advantage. So what should black do? If black can't take this rook, it can't stop white from capturing black's king. So if black's king moves away, white then captures black's rook. Well, this is actually the best situation for black. After this, we see that this pawn hasn't promoted yet, and this white rook cannot really move. If it moves away, then black captures this pawn. However, we see that in this position, white successfully captured this a8 rook for nothing, and white is up material, up 2 pawns. Now, it is still a long game for white to win, but eventually, if white plays well, white is going to win this game. White has more pawns on the king side, and eventually, white's pieces will overwhelm black's. So this move, rook to b8, attacking the king, attacking the rook, at the same time threatening to promote, is a tactic associated with promoting the pawn. Let's look at another example. In this game, we see that this c7 pawn is just about to promote. The rook on c1 is protecting the c7 pawn and supporting it to play pawn to c8 to promote. However, there's a black queen on this square that is blocking white's promote. What can white do? White cannot move this pawn, obviously, and if white moves this rook away from the c-file, black simply captures this unprotected pawn. Now we see that white has a bishop on e2 that is not really doing anything in this position. Now the ideal way to help promote this pawn is let this white bishop somehow attack this c8 square, and if black moves its queen away, then white gets to promote. If black does not move its queen away, then white captures the queen. White really wants to play bishop to g4. This square is supported by the h3 pawn, attacking this c8 queen. However, black got this square controlled. If white plays this, black captures this bishop for easy. So, white has a beautiful tactic over here. White plays bishop to a6. Now this move seems like just giving up a bishop for nothing. Black can simply capture this bishop with a queen. However, black moved its queen away from the c8 square. Now, white gets to promote its pawn to a queen. Now let's just say that black and white trades off queen. We look at this position again, we see that white is up a rook. It will be an easy win for white now. But looking at the original game, we see that white is actually not up material. White has a pawn, rook, and a bishop, which is 1 plus 5 plus 3, that is 9 points. And black has a queen, which is worth 9 or 10 points. So, by this tactic over here, bishop to a6, luring the queen away from its defense position, white gets to promote a queen and gain material advantage. If black does nothing with his queen, then obviously the next move white will definitely capture this queen and gain an even more material advantage. So these are another 3 examples of common tactics. Hope you learned something from the video, and don't forget to subscribe. I'm KK, and thanks for listening.